1130. Context changes everything.
This is Bloomberg Business Week Daily with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, so we continue to try to make sense of the U.S. economy. As we've been discussing, growth is slowing, the job market is cooling, inflation has eased from its peak, but still above target. The Fed is still cautious again, and credit conditions show stress in places, even while banks overall look resilient. And I got to say, we are spending so much time, you and I feel like when we do our planning calls in the morning, of just, are there cracks when it comes to credit and any kind of financial stress?
Well, one person that we regularly go to for his view on the economy and rates and building is Frank Sorrentino. He's chairman and CEO of the publicly held New Jersey-based community bank ConnectOne Bancorp. It's a parent company of ConnectOne Bank. It counts small businesses and construction companies among its customers. It's got locations in New Jersey, New York, and Florida. And what's unique about Frank is that he has a background as a builder. He actually studied construction in college, so we always like to talk to him about supply and demand when it comes to those physical things, buildings and homes.
Certainly, you know, we're seeing a lot of people have a lot of apprehension about where we stand right now, right?
Yeah.
So small businesses have a lot of concerns. There's so many things going on. There's so many different data points to look at or not look at or not have information in front of them. I know we've talked about this before. I keep saying I believe we're on a robust footing here with our economy.
Because you see it in terms of what, loan generation or what?
Our clients, you know, they discuss the issues of, you know, not being sure what to do next. Yet when you ask them, how are sales? What's going on? Are your revenues up? Are you thinking about expansion? Are there opportunities? Are you looking to hire people? In our market anyway, in the New York metro market, which is the market we represent, we're finding that the business owners here are doing quite well, and they're continuing to do well. And there's so many inputs that are helping that. AI is helping in a lot of cases. Just the amount of capital coming into this region, the amount of construction going on, the amount of heavy and highway work, just you name it. Manufacturing, I think there was a fact that came out about New York manufacturing is on the rise, something that was actually a little bit of a surprise to most. Not to me. Our clients are telling us that business is continuing to improve, yet they have trepidation about, you know, where they settle right now. However, interestingly, if you ask them where they think they'll be in 6 months from now, everyone says they think they'll be in a better place.
Wow. Oh,
so everyone is counting on the economy getting better,
right?
And or at least their conception of what better may be from where they are today. What I say is they're in a good economy now, and it's going to continue to do better. Now, there's also the tale of two different stories here. There are some parts of our economy that are not doing as well as others, and I think we saw some of the reaction to that relative recently in some of the political events that have occurred. So I think we do need to take a look at this what's the distribution of where wealth is being created and not created.
As a New Yorker, it's nice to hear that things in the New York City area are looking good, but it also makes me think of the changing politics of the city and Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani. And you know, this is not a political question. It's simply a question about how people should plan for the future. We reported that aides to President Trump have spent the days following Mamdani's victory in New York reviewing federal funds that benefit the city to potentially suspend or cancel, a White House official said, highlighting the threat of retribution over the Democratic Socialist win. If we were to see in New York City or New York State funding cut off for some of these projects, would that have a big effect on the economy?
Look, I would believe the answer would be yes. It will have some effect on the economy.
Because you mentioned some infrastructure projects that you're seeing.
I don't know how big that would be, and I don't know what the, you know, it seems to me in this economy for the last 12 months or so, there seem to be so many inputs that have been maybe going in one direction, maybe a negative way, and something else turns around and comes back in the other direction. So, look, New York has always been New York, and we've been through all different types of political environments, and there've been ups and downs. But if you chart the growth of New York from 1609 or whenever, when the first settlement started here, through to today, it has been an uphill, nonstop economy. And so I have every confidence that New York is going to continue to be the place to be. Are there challenges here today about affordability and who can live here and, you know, some of the changes that need to be made? Absolutely. I think we'll get those things right. One thing I have learned from this administration, there are a lot of threats that are made and a lot of, you know, there's a lot of saber rattling. At the end of the day, though, I think our president loves the city of New York. I can't see him doing anything that's generally going to be harmful to the city.
Brian, correct us if we're wrong, though. We were talking with some of our folks who also cover like the banking area, and our understanding is you do have some exposure to rent regulated
We do.
properties or apartments. I think via your CRE lending. So with the Mamdani win here in New York City, how do you feel about that exposure and what he has said about his pledge to freeze rents?
So look, for those, for those properties that we're trying to convert from rent regulated or rent stabilized rather to market rent, those properties are going to have some challenges going forward because that's not going to happen. And part of that was the 2009, let's not forget the 2019 law made that change.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting, right? The candidate everybody wanted to win, which was Andrew Cuomo. He's the one who signed that law. So everybody's afraid of the mayor coming in, but yet, it was the one who ran against him that brought that law to pass. For the balance of the rent stabilized properties that are out there that are already cash flowing and have been underwritten under those terms, I think they're going to be fine. As a matter of fact, the current mayor-elect has spoken many times about programs possibly to lower property taxes for some of those property owners and come up with insurance programs to sort of help out to keep the rents at a lower rate. If that's true, and if there's going to be some level of negotiation around what to do or how to do it to keep the rent increases lower, I'm all for it. That's great. What we have found over the years is that there have been rent increases. There was just one passed recently for, I think, about 3% that went into effect in October. And let's not forget that the current mayor has 6 picks still on the rent guidelines board. And they're not, they are supposed to look at the economy on the ground today, where are expenses, the city does raise your taxes and your sewer fees and the cost of everything else goes up. So rents should go up appropriately as well, based on inflation. So I do think there'll be a give and take there. And at the end of the day, look, I think having affordable apartments is a very, very great thing for our city. I'd like to see us be able to do more in that regard here in New York City.
Why don't we do more? And I guess I asked that because
we would need a very long program to get into what, there are cities and towns. New Rochelle is an example of that, where they've taken the opposite approach, which is let's build as many apartments as we can possibly build. Let's let the developers go build.
Yeah, it's dense
and
up
they
there.
did that. And, the laws of supply and demand are sort of like gravity, right? You can't undo them. And so they built a lot of supply. Yeah. And guess what happened to the rents? They came down.
Yeah.
They didn't go up. They went down.
We had the mayor, Yadira Ramos-Herbert, on a few months ago talking about this and the zoning changes. You have a background as a builder. You actually went to college for this before you were a banker. And I think it's fair to say that I'm not going to say all economists, most economists would agree the way to decrease housing prices is to build more housing. How do you do that in New York City? And are developers going to do that in New York? Like, what would developers need in the next administration in order to do that, apart from zoning changes? Like, what would they need to hear from City Hall that says, you guys can go ahead and build more housing?
Well, we would need zoning changes. We would need the ability to build housing that is affordable to build. You can't add on all of these issues.
Yeah.
Listen, I come from a union family, so I love, unionized workforces. But if you're going to force every small apartment builder to build using union labor, you're going to drive up the cost. If we're going to force buildings to not be able to use certain types of natural gas appliances, or they got to meet certain environmental.
These are all issues that New York City has faced and builders have faced here.
And so they keep adding all of these things on, and it makes the projects unaffordable. And if they're unaffordable, they don't get built.
Just one last question, because I've got it. We're Bloomberg. We do have a last Fed meeting come December. What are you expecting? What do you think? You sound pretty upbeat.
Look,
Just got about 40 seconds here.
The Fed's got a tough job ahead of them. On the one hand, unemployment and the employment structure in the economy is giving some mixed signals.
Yeah.
Larger businesses may be hiring, smaller businesses may be laying off. That could be temporary. In that camp, I do believe that the smaller businesses are going to catch up soon. I do think there is. I don't think there's a lot of inflation built into the economy. I think the tariffs are sort of skewing some of those numbers. I think they're going to have a tough call. My hope would be that they continue on the path and they cut rates another 25 basis points in December.
Our thanks to Frank Sorrentino, Chairman and CEO over at Connect One Bancorp. And
just after Frank's interview, a couple days, we found that sales of previously owned homes in the U.S. rose at the fastest pace in 8 months in October as buyers took advantage of lower mortgage rates and gained the upper hand over sellers in some markets.
Yeah, this is data coming from the National Association of Realtors, released this past week. Contract closings climbing 1.2% to an annual rate of 4.1 million in October. The median sales price gained 2.1% from a year ago to a little bit over $415,000. But the improvement was noted to be fueled in part by a decline in borrowing costs, which dropped to the 6.3% range last month from nearly 7% back in May, with sales strongest among more expensive homes, particularly those costing $750,000 or more, Tim. So certainly relates to a lot of housing prices here on the East Coast.
Well, speaking of housing prices, as we talked about with Frank, it's very political, and it was kind of at the center of the election here in New York City when it came to Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani's victory, the idea of affordability and getting more people into more homes. And as Frank mentioned, the way to do that, and I think a lot of economists would agree, is to actually build more housing. On that, the editors over at Bloomberg Opinion put out a column all about cities potentially waking up to the housing crisis.
First of all, I feel like the housing crisis we've been talking about forever and ever and ever. People say it's not just about building homes, it's building them in the places where they make sense for people. So affordable housing so that people aren't commuting an hour and a half, 2 hours to get into New York City or another major city in order to work.
Yet, as the opinion editors point out, at long last, quote, voters seem to be waking up to a problem that research identified decades ago. Policies that protect existing homeowners and other local interests have restricted development and driven up costs. The editors write that New Yorkers voted to speed up reviews of affordable housing and other modest projects and weaken local council members' veto power. All I'll say as a New Yorker is there were some areas in my old neighborhood that I had never seen without scaffolding, and I was there for 10 years.
It's a lot. Anyway, problem that continues to plague a lot of major cities, but hopefully at some point we can actually make some progress. All right, everybody, that wraps up the first hour of the weekend edition of Bloomberg Business Week from Bloomberg Radio. Coming up in the next 60 minutes, a milestone this past week for crypto. Not a good one. We talk about that with a member of the Grayscale investment team.
Plus, how a Midwestern beauty company, Ulta, became an $11 billion behemoth just by writing a new industry playbook.
Also unlocking the best in one another. That's what behavioral psychologist John Levy calls collective genius. What he says about good leadership skills and what really makes a leader that everybody follows, might make you scratching your head a little bit. It's really a great conversation. He joins us in the next hour. This is Bloomberg Business Week. I'm Carol Master.
I'm Tim Stanovic. Stay with us. Today's top stories and global business headlines are coming up right now.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is WBBR New York, Bloomberg 1130. Coming up, the latest market-moving headlines from Bloomberg. First, an update from our partners at CBS News. This is CBS News on the Hour, sponsored by O'Reilly Auto Parts.
I'm Michael Toscano. Georgia U.S. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene is giving up her seat in the House.
Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, in a social media post, expresses frustration with her party, writing that GOP leadership had refused to work on addressing health care costs and bills that she drafted on other issues. The Republican has claimed that President Trump pulled his support for her. He was set off by her push to disclose records related to Jeffrey Epstein. So in an online video, Greene says January 5th is her last day.
I'm going back to the people that I love to live my life to the fullest as I always have. And I look forward to a new path ahead.
Jennifer Kuiper, CBS News.
With the Republican majority in the House razor thin, Georgia's Republican Chairman Josh McCoon says he expects a special election for her seat in February or March. CBS's Zach Hudak tells us the meeting between President Trump and New York City Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani at the White House turned out to be unexpectedly friendly.
I think this was surprising to a lot of us, but at the same time, the two of them have a lot in common. Even though they're on opposite ends of the political spectrum, they're both popular almost entirely around affordability of Americans.
President Trump is ending deportation protections for Somali immigrants in Minnesota. Trump posted on social media without providing evidence that, quote, Somali gangs are terrorizing the people of that great state. The State Department says there are 705 Somali immigrants in the U.S. under status. 2 states in northern Nigeria have ordered all public schools to be closed following the abduction of several hundred students and a dozen teachers from a Catholic school there. BBC's Fiona McDonald has details.
Officials in Katsina and Plateau states said the move is a temporary measure. It comes after gunmen abducted more than 200 students and staff from a Catholic boarding school in Niger State. Police soldiers them in a nearby forest.
Michael Holiday Travelers will service. Loyola University student Topher Royce is headed home on Amtrak after he had a bad airline experience a few weeks ago.
It was a mess, a lot of delays, so I think Amtrak's definitely the way to go.
2025 has been a banner year for Amtrak. It just closed its fiscal year with record ridership and record revenue.
The Supreme Court has temporarily halted a lower court order that threw out Texas's redrawn congressional maps. That earlier ruling had found that the congressional redistricting plan likely discriminates on the basis of race. This is CBS News.
Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get the parts and service you need fast from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Vanity Fair calls BritBox a delicious streamer. Collider says everyone should be watching. Catch Britain's next best series with BritBox. Stream acclaimed new originals like Code of Silence.
You read lips, right?
And Lily, based on the best-selling mystery series.
Yeah, Lily. Take it from here.
And don't miss the new season of Karen Piri coming this October.
You don't look like police. The compliment.
See it differently when you stream the best of British TV with BritBox. Watch with a free trial today.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here. Wishing you a very happy half-off holiday because right now Mint Mobile is offering you the gift of 50% off unlimited. To be clear, that's half the price, not half the service. Mint is still premium, unlimited wireless for a great price. So, that means it's half day. Yeah?
Visit mintmobile.com/radio. Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed 135 gigabytes of Network City. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
To celebrate the release of Wicked for Good, a pop-up has landed in Midtown Manhattan.
Although she doesn't quite fit the demographic, Victoria Hall from Queens is so obsessed, she arrived at 5 a.m. for a Wicked pop-up outside Madison Square Garden.
I love the Wizard of Oz. I'm years old, but seeing it through their eyes is so beautiful and magical.
Leanna View to Brooklyn has already seen the sequel.
I've seen the musical as well, so I knew what I was expecting, but the ending made me cry.
The pop-up sells limited edition vinyl versions of the soundtrack. Marla Diamond for CBS News, New York.
K-pop Demon Hunters is one step closer to another golden moment, the Oscars. The Netflix hit is among 35 films announced as eligible for the animated feature film category. Other contenders include Disney's Elio and Zootopia 2 and Crunchyroll Sony's Demon Slayer Infinity Castle. Michael Toscano, CBS News.
Now, a sports update on Bloomberg 1130.
Nets may want to play all their games away from Brooklyn. NBA Cup group play, they've yet to win at home, but on the road, they dumped the Celtics 113-105 at TD Garden. They pulled away, outscoring the Celtics 40-25 in that second quarter. Knicks tip off in Orlando at 5. College football, Rutgers at number 1, Ohio State. Syracuse travels to 9th-ranked Notre Dame. And on the ice, Devils, Isles, and Rangers all play today. That's your Bloomberg Sports Update. I'm Rob Bushka.
Bloomberg Radio, on demand and in your podcast feed.
On the latest edition of the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast, a conversation with Beth Cowett, Bloomberg opinion columnist on U.S. retail.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to think about this now, but a decade ago, Walmart was one of the most reviled companies in America, right? It was being criticized for paying its employees low wages, for wiping out mom and pop retailers, for basically creating a culture of disposable consumerism. So it really was getting hit from a lot of different angles. And rather than just ignore the bad press or hire an army of PR people, it decided to do something about it. And Doug McMillon decided we're going to invest in our people. And $2.7 billion over a couple of years. And we now know this really paid off.
So, I mean, for Doug McMillon, to me, after reading your article, this could be one of his, as he's stepping down, could be one of his lasting legacies at the company.
I really think so. I think that, he's been at the company now more than a decade. I think this will be among sort of the most enduring things that he has done. I'm not sure that the company would be in the place it's at today if he had not really addressed this.
And let's be clear about what exactly he did with that $2.7 billion. Pay increases, there was training, and really just attracting a better quality worker.
Yeah, and the way he did this was, right, it was pay increases, but more than anything else, it was creating not low-paying jobs, but a career, right? There was now a path for people who started at Walmart to move up the ranks. And that was really important, right, to attracting more ambitious employees, to getting them to stay. And I think that shifted the whole culture of the company.
Hear the full conversation on the latest edition of the Bloomberg Intelligence Podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Plus, listen anytime on the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Stay connected with Bloomberg wherever you are with Bloomberg Podcast. On the Big Take Asia, animal experiments are fueling China's biotech rise. On Trumponomics, how President Trump's tariffs are everywhere and nowhere. And on the Michelle Hussein Show, Stanford University professor Fei-Fei Li helped create AI. Now she feels the responsibility. Listen to Bloomberg Podcast on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app or anywhere you get your podcasts. Bloomberg Podcast. Context changes everything.
This is Bloomberg Business Week Daily, reporting from the magazine that helps global leaders stay ahead, with insight on the people, companies, and trends shaping today's complex economy, plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week Daily with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
Plenty ahead in our second hour of the weekend edition of Bloomberg Business Week, including how looking good became a $450 billion industry and how one retail behemoth is giving strip malls the major glow up. We're talking Ulta Beauty.
Plus, we'll hear from the behavioral psychologist with alternative thinking on what makes great leaders. It may just be time to throw out all those management books, at least according to John Levy. He's the author of Team Intelligence, How Brilliant Leaders Unlock Collective Genius. And he joins us a little later.
First up this hour, the great crypto crash of 2025 entered a new phase on Wednesday as Bitcoin plunged to its lowest level in 7 months, extending the more than $1 trillion wipeout across the digital asset. The day before that, on Tuesday, investors pulled more than $500 million from BlackRock's iShares Bitcoin Trust, the largest single-day outflow, Tim, since the fund's debut.
The total market cap of cryptocurrencies peaked at about $4.3 trillion. Now, that was a little over a month ago, back on October 6th. It now hovers around $3.2 trillion, and much of that change reflects paper losses, not real-world cash leaving hands. To talk all things crypto, we were joined by Zach Pandel, head of research at the Crypto Asset Manager Investments. Also, Isabel Lee, Bloomberg News cross-asset reporter.
And just one more thing, Grayscale recently filed for an IPO, so we know the company manages about $35 billion in assets with more than 40 products giving exposure to over 45 tokens.
Well, what I see is a repricing of technology-related assets across the board, whether it's some of the AI names, satellite companies, quantum computing stocks, and crypto has been part of that story. So it really hasn't been a crypto-specific sell-off. It's been a frontier technology sell-off. And so I see macro drivers behind that rather than crypto-specific.
So how do you see Grayscale or just crypto in general? Like, is it a safe haven? Is it a cryptocurrency? Is it a currency? Is it a commodity? Is it an asset? How do you really define it?
And crypto is a $4 trillion alternative asset class today. So it's a high alternatives category, and investors think about putting it in their portfolio in that way, alongside hedge funds, private equity, infrastructure bets. Crypto fits in that way.
With the same amount of risk or no? Not necessarily.
It's definitely a higher volatility alternative and it should be considered that way. But that fits very well for many investors with longer term portfolios. They're looking for many different ways to take risks in markets that don't have the same correlation with public market equity. Sometimes that means it outperforms stocks. Sometimes that means it underperforms stocks. It's been a great diversity.
I just want to get one more in, and that's on this conversation. The idea of some of the other assets that you mentioned, okay, if we're talking about alternatives, maybe we're talking private credit, maybe we're talking real estate. Sometimes those are hard assets like real estate. Sometimes they're assets that produce cash like private credit returns. You loan money to people, they give you money back at a higher interest rate.
You hope.
You hope. Yeah. We'll see if that happens in the future. With Bitcoin, that doesn't exist. There are no cash flows with Bitcoin.
That's right. So we call it the crypto asset class. We could call it the blockchain asset class, because that's what it's all about. Blockchain technology, that's what stitches together everything in the crypto asset class, and it has a diverse range of use cases. Digital money like Bitcoin, digital finance applications like decentralized finance, stable coins, tokenization, all the things we've been talking about this year. It is all of those different things, and it will compete in some ways with commodity markets. In some ways, it'll compete with equity markets. And so it is hard to give a tight answer because it is its own unique thing. A $4 trillion blockchain-based digital finance and money class, how we think about it.
So Grayscale is an early mover, actually, when it comes to offering crypto funds, namely Bitcoin and Ether. They scored a legal victory. That's why we have this very successful dozen or so Bitcoin ETFs that we have seen. Ether ETFs, Doge, Ethereum, everything, really. How has the proliferation of ETFs reshaped the market? And do you think it's for better or for worse?
Well, absolutely for better. I mean, it's broadening access to this asset class to a much wider range of investors and allowing them to access it in ways that's convenient for them, with the same reason that they use ETFs for other purposes. You can include it in tax-advantaged accounts. It makes taxes easier. It makes estate planning easier. All of these reasons are why the ETFs have been so popular.
What is your response to when people say the whole premise of Bitcoin is to be decentralized? And now the biggest holders of IBIT is BlackRock, Harvard, although we know that's not really a conviction bet. It could just be because of basis trade and all of that. But BlackRock, all those big issues, Grayscale.
Yeah, that's right. The premise is that Bitcoin mining, which provides the security for this network, is decentralized. And if for some reason that were to be questioned in the longer run, investors should question Bitcoin, because that's the thing that really matters, not who is holding the asset. And the same is for gold. Nation states hold gold as a decentralized asset, the store of value, and they keep it in the basement of the New York Fed here in downtown Manhattan. So it's just convenient to hold it in this same place, the ETFs. Or gold, that's not what gives it its value. It's really Bitcoin mining that's core to the value.
I've actually seen some of that gold, by the way.
Have you?
Yeah, years ago, and I got to go underground and see the gold. They wouldn't allow us to take pictures.
I bet they were allowed to see. I was going to ask for a photo.
It's there.
Why not just buy crypto directly? Because the whole idea is this to be this kind of pure, straight to it. Very different from what the financial system has been, Zach. Why do I need to? Or anybody else who's kind of a middleman or middle individual.
The of this technology is taking intermediaries out of the financial system, and we are going to drive huge efficiencies in the financial system over time through tokenization, stablecoins, all these different use cases. However, there will be a lasting role for certain types of intermediaries, we think, including fund managers and others. And we are just providing a convenient way to access these assets for many types of investors. Again, for taxes, for estate planning, for tax-advantaged accounts, it makes it much more effective. But self-custody, holding your crypto yourself is a core part of what the asset class is all about. And we certainly would encourage more sophisticated investors that have an understanding that to please go for it.
But don't for cryptocurrencies to have value, don't we have to really be using them to do things? And we're still, no offense, but I'm still, I don't know, still using dollars. So like, I'm just trying to understand, like, I understand blockchain. Like if you buy a house and you have, rather than, the ownership and so on and so forth, there's all there, the papers. I understand the blockchain, that value.
But that hasn't happened yet, by the way. Like, we're still doing old school titles.
That's right. Thank you, titles. But I don't quite still yet the transacting that I will be doing. I think there's been research that it's still a lot of folks who want to keep things, under the radar, illegal activities.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand.
So I think you're going to be using stable coins. And we had, a lot of people are hearing more about this year because we had a key piece of legislation in July, the Genius Act, which provided a comprehensive regulatory framework for stable coins here in the U.S. And over time, you will see many more payments use cases for this technology. You will also see stable coins on corporate balance sheets. You will see stable coins as collateral on the major U.S. derivatives exchanges. So you will see this dollar-based, blockchain-based dollar ubiquitous in our system relatively soon.
But if people are using, or companies are using stable coins as collateral, aren't they just saying they're using treasuries as collateral?
Blockchain technology, again, is to take intermediaries out of the financial system.
But those stable coins are backed up by treasuries, depending on where you buy it. But for the most part, if we're talking about the most well-known stable coins like USDC, backed up by treasuries.
Yeah, absolutely. They are backed one for one, and that is written in the regulation, and that's a very important piece of the whole story. If these technologies are going to be ubiquitous in the financial system, they need to be safe for consumers, for the financial system as a whole. That's why this regulation in July was so important.
So as Paul Atkins conceded that he promised a token taxonomy. For the longest time, people have been confused whether Bitcoin is a security or a commodity. And so this moves away from the fact that almost every digital token acts like a stock or something like that. How do you view that? Because the lawyers I've talked to, some viewed it as a win, but some didn't really.
So the Senate is working on legislation exactly on this topic, and I think will clarify a lot of these issues for investors over time. Look, Bitcoin is a commodity. It's a digital commodity, and that can maybe be hard to understand, but that's what it is. It's a digital commodity like gold or copper or silver. It's just in digital form. But there are other crypto assets that look more like a claim of some kind, and I believe we will see more of that it will be common for large corporations to issue tokens as part of their capital structure alongside equity, debt, preferreds, and other hybrid instruments. You will see tokens. And so there's a lot of different uses. It's all based, again, on that same technology, but it's hard to put one label on how these assets are.
I just feel like there's a bunch of smart people here and a lot of smart people at Bloomberg, and we constantly are having conversations like I feel like a toddler. Why? Like, why is this needed?
Well, that's why Zach is here to explain to us all the questions that we have that toddlers would ask. Hey, I mentioned political tailwinds, and one thing that I wanted to get your view on is obviously the regulatory environment is much better for cryptocurrency companies right now than it was during the previous administration. I mean, look at prices as, a result of that. But the Trump family and the Trump family's connections to the actual crypto industry, how do you view that?
Look, it's not a crypto-friendly administration. It's a crypto-friendly nation or crypto-friendly voter base.
I don't know. I don't necessarily agree with that. And here's why I don't agree with it. And push back on this, feel free. But yes, a lot of the pro-crypto candidates won in 2024, but the messaging that the crypto community pushed in their districts wasn't crypto messaging. Like if you look at the ads for Bernie Moreno, who won in Ohio, it wasn't about crypto. It was about other issues that resonated with those voters. So I don't necessarily see it as a crypto-friendly nation. Is that what you meant by crypto-friendly nation? Like these people were voted in?
What I mean is that holders of the technology, users of the technology are bipartisan. That is a global asset class, and we see comparable things happening all over the world. That Democrats voted for the Genius Act and the Clarity Act that passed the House, and I think will again vote for market structure legislation in the Senate. And this is really a key issue for us as an industry, that it continues to be bipartisan so that any changes are durable and they last well beyond any one individual.
So essentially you're saying is it doesn't really matter. At this point, the administration doesn't really matter because these laws have been put into effect. It doesn't matter who SEC chair is.
In the long run, it doesn't matter because this is innovative technology that's going to transform the financial system. And how the politics shake out over time is hard to predict. But I have no doubt that in 10 and 20 years' time that the technology and the assets will be everywhere in our financial system and will have clean regulation. Everywhere.
And now you see Democrats as on board as Republicans were last year.
Increasingly on board, and I think that that's because their voters care about these issues. In our own survey data, slightly more Democrats hold crypto assets than Republicans. So we see it clearly as a bipartisan issue. And I think, again, you see that in the House and Senate also.
Our thanks to Zach Pandel, head of research at the crypto asset manager Grayscale Investments, along with Isabel Lee. She's Bloomberg News cross-asset reporter.
Coming up, what makes the best leaders? It's not necessarily humility, emotional intelligence, or empathy. It really boils down to one thing, or so says at least one behavioral scientist and New York Times bestselling author.
Okay, but those things make a good co-anchor.
Thank you. Well, thank you, buddy. Thank you. We talk about what makes really good leaders. That's coming up next.
Breaking news first. September payrolls rise more than expected.
Non-farm payrolls, 119,000.
We did see unemployment rise. Pretty solid labor market right here. Rate cut tilt in place in reaction.
And insight from the experts.
It's going to keep the possibility of a rate cut definitely on the table.
Can change anybody's mind?
I think the Fed can cut in December.
For breaking news, moves markets. Stay with Bloomberg 1130. Context changes everything.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. DoorDash is a big hit with older consumers this year, landing the delivery firm at the top of Morning Consult's new list of the nation's 20 fastest growing brands. Jeff Cartwright is an executive with the researcher.
Where most of DoorDash's growth is coming from is from Gen Xers and Boomers.
The list looks at brands that saw the biggest jump in purchasing consideration. Fruit of the Loom ranked second, and Great Value French fried potatoes also made the top 5.
When the economy has been tough, you see these value brands jump to the top of the list because people are looking to trade towards one of those things that are more affordable.
Coming in at number 3, the TikTok Shop.
It speaks to the power of TikTok as a platform, but B, to their ability to monetize that platform.
Breyer's Ice Cream rounded out the top 5, and 2 AI chatbots made the top 10, Gemini and ChatGPT. This year, Morning Consult also ranked the 20 fastest growing brands among TikTok users. Lowe's came in at the top, followed by Samsung Galaxy and then Sprite. Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
Bloomberg Radio, on demand and in your podcast feed.
On the latest edition of the Bloomberg Daybreak U.S. edition podcast, we talked about a stomach-churning week for markets with Bloomberg's Valerie Teitel.
It's really crypto and the move in NVIDIA yesterday, which drove one of the biggest swings in the NASDAQ I have seen in my career. We dropped nearly 4% in yesterday's session in an hour and 40 minutes, Nathan. A kind of intraday swing like that doesn't come around often, and it probably put some hair on some traders' chests yesterday. Huge U-turn in the market, sparked by what we are unsure, and that is what is unnerving investors on this Friday. Might I add to all of this that this is ahead of the Thanksgiving week, which is known historically to be quite an illiquid week of trading. Perhaps those investors who on the sidelines or might be choosing this Friday afternoon to de-risk ahead of the holiday.
Is this just about concern around AI valuations, or are concerns about what the Fed could do next month feeding into this as well?
You know, I mean, I like to, as someone who comes from a fixed income background, I do believe the Fed is always instrumental in moves like this. We have had a hawkish round of Fed speak in the last 3 weeks, and essentially what we got from that employment report yesterday didn't necessarily help. Yes, it was delayed. It was September's data, but again, it plays into the hands of the hawks that might want to argue that the labor market has found some ground. There was a big beat with that headline number coming at 119K versus estimates of 51. And we did have some hawkish Fed speak yesterday as well. We heard from Goolsbee saying he's essentially uneasy about cutting in December, bar focusing on inflation concerns.
Hear the full conversation on the latest edition of the Bloomberg Daybreak U.S. Edition podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Plus, listen anytime on the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com.
Want to know how Russian pranksters tricked the top government official? Or how the only copy of a Wu-Tang Clan album got auctioned for millions of dollars by the Department of Justice? The answers are out there. The trick is getting the government to share them. From Bloomberg and No Smiling, this is Disclosure, a podcast about prying loose government secrets. To listen early and ad-free on Apple Podcasts, subscribe now at Bloomberg.com/podcast offer.
Now, a sports update on Bloomberg 1130.
No place like the road for the Nets, as they're 3-5 on the road, yet winless at home, and 0-7 in NBA Cup group play. He took down the Celtics at TD Garden 113-105. Nick Claxton, his first career triple-double. Nick's playing Orlando at 5. College football, Rutgers is at top-ranked Ohio State. Syracuse at number 9, Notre Dame. The Isles, Rangers, and Devils all drop the puck later on tonight. That's your Bloomberg Sports Update. I'm Rob Bushka.
This is Bloomberg Business Week Daily with Carol Nasser and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
Elon has it. So too does President Trump and Steve Jobs also, as well.
We're talking about leadership. I mean, these are all leaders.
Mm-hmm.
John Levy thinks about leadership a lot. He argues, though, that one thing all leaders have in common is not the thing that we're told when it comes to these executive coaches or these business school courses, like, empathy or humility, those sorts of things. He says it's something else. John Levy is a behavioral scientist and New York Times bestselling author. He's got a new book out, Team Intelligence: How Brilliant Leaders Unlock Collective Genius.
Let's think about it like this. Elon Musk or Steve Jobs, right? They weren't great at creating psychological safety or even getting consensus among their leadership. Yet people still hold them up as these examples of amazing leaders. The problem is that what we've been sold is that, and mostly through universities like Harvard, Yale, and so on, is that we have to have these essential skills if you want to be a leader. And if you pay them a whole lot of money, they'll teach you those skills, and then you'll be a certified leader. Congratulations. The problem is it just doesn't track. When we really started looking at this, there was only one trait that was common across all leaders.
What is it?
It's that they have followers. It's so self-referential, and it's kind of ridiculous. And so we really wanted to ask the question then, okay, what causes us to follow someone? And generally, people say, okay, it's vision and charisma. But that doesn't make sense. There are plenty of people who have no vision and no charisma, and still people follow them.
Yeah.
So the answer, it turns out, comes down to this. Do you remember how you felt when you were in high school on Sunday at 6 p.m.? The Sunday scaries?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want you to think about this. You were free, you were at home, but you felt anxious. Friday at 1 o'clock, you were in class. But how did you feel?
Great.
Yeah, so excited.
Ecstatic.
And that's because human beings don't relate to the present. They relate to the future that they believe they have. If you can make me feel...
We don't live in the moment.
Definitely not. We believe, we tend to have this association right now to what we think is about to happen. And so in high school on Sunday, what was going to happen was school the next day. Or if you're about to leave for vacation, you might be sitting at work, but you're wildly excited. The reason we follow somebody is because when we interact with them or their media, they cause us to feel that there'll be a new and better future. That's it.
So that's fascinating. So let's take it to somebody, President Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Is that kind of his success, or
Absolutely.
where he is today? It's because of that.
I would argue that people in general vote for whoever they feel will cause them to have a new and better future. Whether it's President Trump or it's investing into Elon Musk's companies. Listen, when you read the reports of what he's like as a boss, Elon, right? It's not the type of boss that we exemplify.
I mean, you might not even have to read reports of what he's like as a boss. You could just follow him on social media and get a good understanding of his personality.
And when you do, you have to ask yourself, like, is this really the person I'd want to be reporting to? And the answer is maybe not, but what he's amazing at is he has a handful of super skills that nobody else has, right? He thinks at scale and moves faster than anyone in our society. And those super skills are so profound that when we interact with them, people will either say, hey, we'll give him $1 trillion bonus, or we will come and work for you, or we want to launch things into space. But it's not because he's charismatic.
Right. I mean, look at the example of when he pieced together the Doge team. What were the qualifications that he put out there? Right. You have to work 80 hours a week. You're not going to get paid.
Yeah.
And he had people from all over the country who not just wanted to work with him, but believed in his mission.
Yeah, it's really kind of fascinating. So the things that we get, so being nice and generous, is not necessarily things that are going to make a good leader. Like it's.
So I want to separate two things. Though.
Okay.
Let's separate being an effective leader from having followers.
Okay.
Having followers just means that people feel that you'll have a new and better, or they'll feel.
Doesn't mean you will.
Correct. Because you could have somebody who's incompetent leading a bunch of morons, frankly, and get nowhere. When we actually started looking at the research of what causes teams to be really effective, it came from a woman named Anita Williams-Lloyd. And what she found in running a whole series of experiments is that none of the things that we actually thought actually make a team more effective, right? So IQ of the smartest person, no effect. Average IQ, no effect. Each other, not a great predictor, right? Do you need to trust each other? Sure. Or think that somebody's competent? Yeah. But you don't necessarily need to want to invite everybody you work with to your wedding or something like that. The single greatest predictor, the number of women on the team. Yeah. And I want to be clear, it's not because they're women. It's not a chromosomal thing. We're not out of a job. Don't worry. He was
looking at me.
Yeah. It's because women index higher on emotional intelligence. And so there are plenty of men with high emotional intelligence, plenty of women who don't have any.
But this makes a better, so more women on a team means what?
That on average, emotional intelligence on the team,
and then
the team can function better because they can coordinate better, outperform. Because when you have a single person sport, it's all about pure talent, right? Or activity. But when you have a group, you've gone from taking your shots to passing either information or the ball. Now, if I can't communicate with you, we are not going to be able to work well together.
Right.
Having that high emotional intelligence on the team, we know when to push on a topic and when not to. Who to call on, even if it's quiet, and get the information out.
Your behavioral science. Well, what is your credential in this? Because you study behavioral science.
Yeah.
But there are entire curricula that are dedicated to teaching leadership that ostensibly have evidence-backed, elements that are backed by studies that say this is the right way to do things. And you're essentially saying that's not really the right predictor here. We haven't been looking at the right thing. What's the evidence that you have when it comes to number of followers or people who are actually following this charismatic personality that says this is the right outcome?
So let's separate a few things. On the team stuff, there's a bunch of research. I mentioned Anita Williams-Willey, and there's several studies that back the same thing, that teams with more emotional intelligence outperform. On the leadership side, when you actually look at all of the studies on people who've gotten MBAs versus those who didn't, they find that there is absolutely no improvement in performance whatsoever having an MBA versus not, compared, and there's like several of these studies on the 3-year mark, 5-year mark, 7-year mark. There's no evidence in better management skills or anything like that. And so the skills that we're told are essential, we might not really be able to train them in the way that these programs are running.
The reason I ask about I know you want to jump in, but the reason I ask about the credentialing here is because you have this background in having these dinners and hosting thousands of people over the last 10 years.
15
people, 15 years, 4,000 people.
Yeah.
These are private influencer dinners where you have had Nobel laureates, Olympians, Grammy-winning musicians, all at different times show up and be together. What are the takeaways that you've been able to gather from getting this disparate group of people together and having them interact with one another?
So, there's kind of two main things that I've really noticed. The first is that all of them are at the top of their industry, whether they're commanding the International Space Station or they're running a major company. And none of them have the same characteristics at all. Malala does not produce results in the same way as a military commander, but people follow and will go very far in both cases, right, to support that cause. The second is, and this is kind of a wilder thing that people don't really notice, is that no matter how successful people are, they tend not to feel like they fit in or belong. Because the CEO knows that they've had 3 great quarters, but if the next 2 are off there, they might be out of a job. Yeah. And the Olympian knows that maybe they won at the last Olympics, but who knows if they'll even qualify at the next one, and then no one will care. And so no matter what, there's this absolute factor that people feel a great desire to want to fit in and belong, which brings me to my real desire to understand is clearly those leadership traits didn't matter. And if there's such a great desire to belong, it's because human beings tend to be best with each other. So let's try and understand at our core what will allow us to be best with each other. And that's what the book explores, which is what are the characteristics that make teams smarter than the sum of their parts?
Okay, so why, if that is our driving force, when I look at Congress, and I know you layer politics on things and things change, but if we are better...
They cannot be studied.
If we are better as a group, as a community, and yes, indeed, right, they have to vote on things, and so when they work together, things can actually move forward, or at least move. Why does that not work its way out?
So that's, I think, a great question, and I want to be very clear. I don't study politics. I'm not an expert.
And full disclosure, like you lay politics on everything, and it's a little bit different.
I'm under the impression that things changed, and this is what I've been told, after Newt Gingrich was in Congress, because he really pushed for less cooperation and also for people to spend more time in their home districts. Now, when that occurs, then we have something called the mere exposure effect. The mere exposure effect is simply, here's the funny thing. Have you ever... What would you consider the greatest painting of all time?
Well, people will say Mona Lisa.
Exactly. Do you know why?
Isn't it the perfectly symmetrical?
That's what they'll tell you, but that's frankly not true. In 1911, a man walked into the Louvre on a Monday while it was closed. The Louvre was protected by 11 mostly drunk legionnaires, and walked into the Renaissance section, ripped the smallest painting he could off the wall, took it out of its frame, and then wrapped it in workman's smock and walked out.
That was the Mona Lisa, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Newspapers around the world spread images of it, and that's the first time almost anybody had ever heard of it. It was not considered a great painting. 3 years later, it was returned. Once again, newspapers around the world rejoiced, and it was the build-up to World War I, so it was a way to make fun of the French government and its incompetence at the time. Now, human beings tend to like and trust the things that they're familiar with. And when you see the person who might be across the aisle picking up kids at school, and your kids are in the same class, and you're at the same birthday parties, and you've developed familiarity and trust and all these other factors outside of that voting room, then suddenly you tend to treat people with more humanity and have a greater ability to work with them. And so, much like the Mona Lisa is not really a great painting if you actually speak to historians, the lack of that mere exposure and the trust that develops from interacting outside of these traditional negotiations, we've lost a lot of that.
Our thanks to John Levy, behavioral scientist and New York Times bestselling author. His new book, Team Intelligence, How Brilliant Leaders Unlock Collective Genius.
Still ahead on Bloomberg Business Week, speaking of leadership, the CEO behind creating an $11 billion beauty behemoth. We're talking the Business Week cover story on Ulta.
In 2019, right before the pandemic, its annual revenue was $6 billion, and in 2024, it has increased all the way to $11 billion. So it's a booming business, even though you might not notice it every day.
This is Bloomberg.
This is New York's only 24-hour source for world markets and breaking business news. Bloomberg 1130. Coming up, the latest market-moving headlines from Bloomberg. First, an update from our partners at CBS News.
CBS News Brief. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene of Georgia says in an online video she is resigning from Congress in January, citing her feud with President Trump.
I do not want my sweet district to have to endure a hurtful and hateful primary against me by the president that we all fought for, only to fight and win my election while Republicans will likely lose the midterms.
There was apparently no feuding as President Trump welcomed to the White House incoming New York Mayor Zohran Mamdani, a man he's recently called a communist.
I think he is going to surprise some conservative people, actually. And some very liberal people he won't surprise them because they already like him.
Amtrak closed out its fiscal year with record revenue and ridership, expecting 1.2 million holiday travelers.
Amtrak still doesn't make money, but its operating loss of $600 million was a 15% improvement from a year ago.
Correspondent Michael Wallace, CBS News Brief. I'm Michael Toscano.
Bloomberg Radio, on demand and in your podcast feed.
On the latest edition of the Bloomberg Business Week Daily Podcast, a conversation with Christina Cassotis, CEO of the Pittsburgh International Airport, on the opening of a new $1.7 billion terminal and security concerns as the FAA tries to shake off the effects of the recent U.S. government shutdown.
We believe strongly that if you don't get safety and security right, nothing else matters. I do want to point out that in that $1.7 billion worth of build, there was no loss of life. And I say that because when the original airport was built, 3 construction workers lost their lives building it. So having an owner's controlled insurance program, delivering a safety program for the construction while we operated safely and securely was job one every day. Our TSA partners, Customs and Border Protection partners, and air traffic control partners, we actually did not see major call-offs ever during the shutdown. We have an incredibly dedicated team out here. We have lots of people who helped out in making sure that they had food and diapers and baby formula and stuff that they could help their families with. We had a food drive, the food bank held a food drive, which we helped support. So there was a lot of care and taking care of our federal partners. We reminded people every day to thank them. And we have had a very good partnership throughout the shutdown, getting ready to open. And I think that's a real testament to the dedication that they have
Hear the full conversation on the latest edition of the Bloomberg Business Week Daily podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. Plus, listen anytime on the Bloomberg Business app and Bloomberg.com. The Fed's top names are on Bloomberg Radio. Fed Governor Stephen Myron.
I would absolutely vote for a 25 basis point cut if my vote was a marginal vote. There's no question about that.
San Francisco Fed President Mary Daly.
We cannot take our eyes off inflation. Americans have endured high inflation too long.
St. Louis Fed President Alberto Musalem.
It's very important that we tread with caution. As Chair Powell said, there's no risk-free path.
For the latest headlines from the Fed, listen on Bloomberg 1130 or anytime on the Bloomberg Talks podcast.
This Money Minute.
It's completely frozen.
Could be like a scene from the movie Frozen, with emergency electricity shortages across the U.S., from the Northeast down to Texas and across the Carolinas, especially with the new demand for power from AI data centers.
Winter is the primary area where we are all concerned about outages.
Abe Silverman, research scholar at Johns Hopkins University.
Only need to look at Winter Storm Uri, the tragedy that happened down in Texas, to really understand how bad an outage in the middle of the winter could be.
More than 200 people died in Uri in 2021. John Moore, Director of Reliability Assessments and Performance and Analysis at the North American Electric Reliability Corp, or NERC, says with data centers sucking up more power than ever, we could be looking at a perfect storm.
It's really about, how likely is one of these cold snaps.
Moore says be ready with generators or other alternatives this winter. He's also calling on data centers to be flexible with their energy use. Denise Pellegrini, Bloomberg Radio.
When your car is making a strange noise, no matter what it is, you can't just pretend it's not happening.
That's an interesting sound.
It's like your mental health. If you're struggling and feeling overwhelmed, it's important to do something about it. It can be as simple as talking to someone or just taking a deep, calming breath to ground yourself. Because once you start to address the problem, you can go so much further. The Huntsman Mental Health Institute and the Ad Council have resources available for you at loveyourmindtoday.org.
Donald Trump is rewriting the Washington Rule Book and reshaping the global economy. If you're trying to connect the dots behind the headlines, Bloomberg's Trumponomics podcast is here to help. I'm Stephanie Flanders, Head of Government and Economics at Bloomberg. Every week I'll bring you a smart, focused conversation with reporters and experts from Washington, Wall Street and beyond. Listen to new episodes every Wednesday and follow Trumponomics wherever you listen.
Hello, I'm Michelle Hussein. Have you listened to the Michelle Hussein Show yet? In this podcast, I speak with people like Elon Musk.
I think I've done enough.
And Shonda Rhimes. That's so cute. This will be a place where every weekend you can count on one essential conversation to help make sense of the world. So please join me, listen and subscribe to the Michelle Hussein Show from Bloomberg Weekend, wherever you get your podcast.
You said they asked interesting questions.
Donald Trump is rewriting the Washington Rule Book and reshaping the global economy. If you're trying to connect the dots behind the headlines, Bloomberg's Trumponomics podcast is here to help. I'm Stephanie Flanders, Head of Government and Economics at Bloomberg. Every week I'll bring you a smart, focused conversation with reporters and experts from Washington, Wall Street and beyond. Listen to new episodes every Wednesday and follow Trumponomics wherever you listen.
Hello, I'm Michelle Hussein. Have you listened to the Michelle Hussein Show yet? In this podcast, I speak with people like Elon Musk.
I think I've done enough.
And Shonda Rhimes. That's so cute. This will be a place where every weekend you can count on one essential conversation to help make sense of the world. So please join me, listen and subscribe to the Michelle Hussein Show from Bloomberg Weekend, wherever you get your podcast.
You said they asked interesting questions.
Stacey Vanek Smith here from Everybody's Business. This week on the podcast, we talk Thanksgiving prices. Max, it's so nice that you host Thanksgiving dinner. That's a great service to your family. Are you in the 18% of potential hosts that regret that decision?
No.
That's up from 14% last year. 18% of people who host Thanksgiving. That's according to LendingTree. Listen to Everybody's Business from Bloomberg Business Week on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Now, a sports update on Bloomberg 1130.
Nets win just their third game of the year. All three, interestingly enough, on the road in NBA Cup group play. They are victorious, 113-105 at TD Garden in Boston, thanks to Michael Porter Jr., another monster game, 33 points. Next, they tip off in Orlando with 5 college football. Rutgers at number 1, Ohio State, Syracuse at 9th-ranked Notre Dame, and on the frozen floor, the Rangers, Devils, and Islanders all play today. That's your Bloomberg Sports Update. I'm Rob Bushka.
Breaking news first. Market volatility continues.
Renewed concerns around AI valuations, and markets are just whipping around.
Harder hit than equities has been Bitcoin.
Bloomberg 1130. First with news. First with reaction.
We don't see steep reversals like this very often.
The reality is there's still questions about the sustainability of AI.
Also say what the Federal Reserve policy is going to look like.
For the latest headlines and smart analysis.
We should get used to seeing some more of this chop.
Stay with Bloomberg 1130.
I'm Elton John. When he was just 13, my friend Ryan White was diagnosed with AIDS. This was 40 years ago. At the time, he was shunned and threatened by his community, yet his grace and determination to help change the world for himself and all those infected with HIV was an inspiration. He is part of the reason I founded the Elton John AIDS Foundation. Since it began, the foundation has helped reach over 100 million people at risk of and affected by AIDS. Learn more at eltonjohnaidesfoundation.org. Follow us at EJF on Instagram.
This is Bloomberg Business Week Daily with Carol Mather and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
Let's talk about Ulta Beauty, because by some measures it's the largest beauty retailer in the country. Yes, larger than Sephora, even though you see those stores everywhere, especially in like high density areas.
So true.
But sometimes Ulta hides in plain sight. Its stores primarily populating suburban and ex-urban shopping centers instead of thriving high-end malls and pricey urban shopping districts.
All right, it is a story about Ulta, how big it is, what it's up to. It is the cover story of the December issue of Bloomberg Business Week. It's written by Amanda Mull. She's Bloomberg Business Week senior reporter, and she joins us in New York City. We've been dying to talk to you about this. But it is true, when I think cosmetics and stuff, I think about the explosion of Sephora, but Ulta Beauty, I feel like it's been a quiet sleeper. It's massive.
Yeah, I think especially for people who live in dense urban areas, and especially perhaps New York City, Ulta sort of hides in plain sight. It opened its 1,500th U.S. location just a couple of weeks ago. That's more than twice the locations that Sephora has in the U.S. The typical Ulta is 10,000 square feet, which is twice the size of the typical Sephora. And it's been around since 1990 and has sort of like quietly grown over the years. And in the last 5 or 6 years, it's had like a real growth spike. In 2019, right before the pandemic, its annual revenue was $6 billion. And in 2024, it has increased all the way to $11 billion. So it's a booming business, even though you might not notice it every day.
What does it say about how Americans shop for beauty products? Because Sephora, for example, this is actually a case, like a Harvard case study in business school, like the experiential part, the way that they built these stores out. How do Americans shop when it comes to Ulta?
Well, the beauty business is sort of fascinating, especially at this point in the retail landscape, because most other sectors of the consumer economy don't really have like a thriving multi-brand retail scene. Department stores, things like that have really declined in a lot of places, as well as like specialty retailers like electronics stores. But beauty is a really in-person business. It is a tactile, fun thing to go shop for. And you want to be able to smell perfume. You want to be able to try a lipstick on or see if a certain foundation actually matches your skin tone, which makes it a really unique opportunity for companies that want to operate brick and mortar stores. And that has been a real upside for Ulta. And Ulta and Sephora sort of take a separate approaches to beauty, really, and they are like both quite successful. Ulta, carries everything from drugstore products to Chanel perfume and Prada lip and Dior lip gloss and things like that. Sephora really concentrates at the upper end of the spectrum. But the Ulta theory is that, women and beauty consumers in general shop across price points. There's very few who only shop at the drugstore or who only shop from high-end brands. So their theory is if you can put that all under one roof and make it really easy for people to go to, when they're out, buying dog food or out shopping for a coat or something like that at a discount store, Ulta is right there, and you can just drive right up, park outside, hop in, get whatever you need.
Tell us about the Ulta Beauty CEO, who's actually been with the company for a while in some different positions.
Yeah, so in January, the longtime CEO, Dave Kimball, stepped down and retired, and Keisha Steelman, the current CEO, took his spot. She has been with Ulta since 2014 in a series of operations roles. Her background is in operations, and she was most recently Chief Operations Officer. And to me, her background is sort of fascinating because, you know, Ulta is a Fortune 500 company, and at the tops of these companies, you usually find people with very similar types of backgrounds. People with elite educations, people who went through certain types of jobs, certain types of, you know, consulting firm work, lawyer work, things like that. Keisha came up through retail from working in stores. Her first job in her career was, you know, in a Target store, and she has worked in stores and then in the corporate governance of stores her entire career. She's from a very small town in Iowa, and she's really, I think, sort of like the Ulta customer. She has a particular insight into how Ulta's customers want to shop. Ulta, something interesting about them, I think, is that they open a lot of rural locations, right? Where you don't get Sephora's, and you may not have like a Target even. So Ulta opens in a lot of places where you know they try to meet people where they are.
Such cool stuff. 30 seconds here. If you say Sephora, do they give you the evil eye?
Yes, you know, a source that I talked to for this story described Sephora and Ulta as frenemies. And you know, they carry a lot of the same products. It's a high end especially, and I think